before we start this fantastic opportunity for all of us at the Fundación Hispano-Judía to introduce both André and Fleur. And today we have the opportunity to have also Jean-David Benichou, who's a benefactor of our Fundación, who's going to be our moderator. And we do it in a very, very special day, as you all know, March 31st. So that will lead us straight into our topic. Today will be a 60-minute Zoom with 40 minutes of dialogue among the speakers. And then 20 minutes, I understand, Jean-David, will be the time that you allocate for questions and answers. Just to delve right into it, since we're at 02 already, I will say very, very briefly that it is honestly a true personal honor for me to have André in this Zoom. André is known all over the world, all over the Jewish world, but also all over the Arab world and internationally. Needless to say, he's a very reputed figure, very known also for being a man of dialogue, a very respected man, and truly the type of Sephardic that we look up to and a model for all of us. So I'm really, really honored to have been introduced to André, thanks to Paul Down, who's a benefactor of our foundation and whose collection, God willing, will also be part of our collection at the Museo Hispano-Judío. So thank you, André, for joining us today.
Thank you, David. You are very generous with me.
Not at all. I've heard about you for many, many, many decades, thanks to my father, and your reputation precedes you. Mónica, si puedes poner en silencio el resto porque empieza a haber interferencias. And I would also like to introduce Fleur Hassan, who first of all is the daughter of her amazing dad, the late Sir Joshua Hassan, former Prime Minister of Gibraltar for 25 years, a real force de la nature, as we say in French. And a week and a half ago, we were celebrating with Fleur the fact that she has just marked her 20th year in Israel after doing her Aliyah. And of all her achievements, and that's a pretty big one to do Aliyah to start with, well, she not only did Aliyah, but she became Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. And I'm very, very proud of having you as a friend and as a friend of the Fundación, to have a woman of your caliber, plus an Andalusian, to represent the city of Jerusalem with all its connotations of peace for all. Well, that's a huge one for us. So I'm very, very proud of that. And last but not least, Jean-David, who's been thank you. And last but not least, Jean-David, who's been a personal friend for over 15 years now, and we met through Taglit, through serving the Jewish people, has been a very, very close friend. He's very connected to everything that is happening in Israel, to the world of technology. He heads Elnet France, who's an important organization in the realm of presenting the positions of Israel in these very dire moments in Europe. So thank you, Jean-David, for supporting us at the Fundación Hispano-Judía. And with Albert Einstein and David Ben-Gurion behind you, I think it's time for us to start. You're on mute.
Thank you very much, David, for your very kind words, and thank you for putting together this great webinar at a time where we are very fortunate because we can witness changes over the very long time. If we look back and regarding the Abraham Agreement last year, although we know that for Morocco it was not the Abraham Agreement, it was totally different, but we are seeing a time of reconciliation between the Muslims and the Jews. We've been witnessing a reconciliation between the Christian and the Jews about 40 years ago. And now we can reflect on what happened in Spain. The foundation, the Hispanic Jewish Foundation, is doing a fantastic and much needed job. And what I propose to you is that we have a debate to look on the large scale, on the long time, see what Israel is getting from its Sephardic community, how important it is now in Israel, see from Morocco what it means to take decision regarding the Jewish people, and look from Spain, what were the consequences over the long time for such the edict of the Alhambra. So my first question, Fleur, is for you. Kodam kol brucha haba. It's a pleasure to have you and to meet with you. So you were born, I believe, in England. So you were a subject of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And then
I still am.
Yeah, you still are. I believe you grew up in Spain, in Andalusia, or in
Gibraltar.
In Gibraltar. Sorry about that. And now you've been living in Israel for many years. I believe you're a lawyer. So my first question to you is, living in Jerusalem, being in charge of foreign affairs for the mayorship, how important is the Sephardic community in Spain? What do you think would be the main intakes for Israel regarding the Sephardic Jews?
Thank you so much, Jean-David. It's such a pleasure to be here with you and with the iconic André Azoulay, who I'm very much looking forward to meeting within the next few months. And of course, to my dear friend and brother, David Hachuel. I don't do anything without him. So I'm so privileged to be here with all of you. Look, I believe in general that Sephardim have got a huge contribution yet to give to the state of Israel. Not that we haven't had many contributions, but the Sephardi community, especially the Spanish-speaking or the Spanish Sephardi community, and I include Morocco with that because my mother's from Tanger and she's from Spanish-speaking Morocco. I still have family there. And what we can contribute to the state of Israel is enormous, and we're still not there. And that is the value of moderation, the value of bridge building, the fact that Sephardim can be a bridge between Arabs and Jews, and we can also be a bridge between ultra-Orthodox and secular, because we were never extreme. We were always moderate. We could always speak to everybody, do business with everybody, and become a glue of society. And what I say constantly in Israel is that if Sephardim, especially from our part of the world, were in charge, we would have already had peace a long time ago, because we know how to connect with the Arab mentality. We are part of it. We know how to connect to the European mentality. We're in the middle. We're kind of, we're like eggs, omelette, sunny side up, scrambled. Anyway, we can do everything. And that is something that the state of Israel still hasn't managed to utilize the potential. Of course, I have an extra layer. I say women can do it because women also have this ability to bring everybody together and cook a great soup. And so between the whole Sephardi heritage that I'm so proud of where my family comes from. I'm so proud of the fact that my father was elected democratically 8 times as the head of state by a Catholic majority. The fact that when my father died and they did a state funeral, the Muslims in Gibraltar, the Moroccans, were crying and saying, our father is dead. I will never, that is part of me. And what I say to my constituents in Jerusalem is, I know how it can be. I've seen it, I've lived it. I want to bring that into Jerusalem, into Israel. And now, of course, I have the great privilege of being very involved in the Abraham Accord civil society organizations. So that is what I bring to them. And that is what I want to bring back to Jerusalem.
Jean-David, you're on mute. Jean-David, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. I've been muted. Sorry about that. So thank you very much. We can feel the passion, that the one that we find in Spain, and no doubt that it's a huge contribution to the state of Israel. André, my next question will be for you. In 1777, Morocco was the first country to establish official relationship with the newly born state of America. and they provided to these young people its first port on the other side of the Atlantic, which was really decisive because at that time they were at war with the British for the independence. And we are seeing that 240 years after, the US president, former US President Donald Trump, had a US official proclamation that the Occidental Sahara was indeed Moroccan. So I would like to ask you a very simple question, because you've been advising the late Hassan II King, and you are also an advisor to Her Majesty Mohamed VI. Why do you think it is so important for a king or for a queen to have excellent relationship with his Jewish people and Jewish citizens?
Thank you, but I will not answer your question. Let me first tell David how grateful I am to him for giving me the privilege, the chance to listen to what Fleur was just said. And it's not just to please anyone that I'm saying that. I feel it very deeply, and it is for me very important, because I was expecting to hear such a word, such a verbatim from an Israeli for such a long time. It didn't happen. It evaporated, it disappeared. I remember hearing that long time ago from my friends in Israel, and I remember I have such a good memory of my longtime compagnon de route, the late Shimon Peres. But this voice, Fleur, this voice was eradicated from the Israeli landscape, unfortunately, everywhere, right, left. It was not said the way you said it, and it makes me so proud, so confident, and so deeply committed to what is still my life challenge, to give a chance for my constituency, which is the same than yours, Fleur, and the same for all of us. You know, I'm not a newcomer. I am just 3,000 years old. Jews arrived in Morocco after the destruction of the first temple. It was not yesterday, but it makes me belonging to such a civilization. You know, that is the privilege of people who are 3,000 or more old. And we have, it's not just in something which is a detail. I'm so proud, as Fleur is, of my culture, of the way my rabbis, my Jewish teachers teach me and open this miracle way to be Jewish and to have as a roadmap, as a reference, our glorious history. And that's why, Fleur, I'm with you. To tell you the truth, I was not expecting to hear you on that way, on that, let's say, vision. We missed it for such a long time, and it's so refreshing and so powerful. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Coming back to your question.
Thank you.
Let me, regarding what you said about the Moroccan-US relation from the very beginning, it's important for you, for all of us to know, and you will know it if you have visited the Essaouira, which you didn't do, I don't think. You know, His Majesty, the King Mohamed VI, inaugurated a year ago on the January 15, 2020, the house I created named Beit Dekira, which means the Memory and History House. And in this house, you can see and you can know, you can just be aware of the fact that the first Jewish person ever elected in the US, one of the writers of the first American Constitution, was a Moroccan Jew, and was a Jew from Essaouira, David Yulee Levy. And there are 2 counties in Florida by his name, but nobody knows. Nobody knows in Israel. Nobody knows in Morocco until we fortunately, and thanks to Benefactor and the King, we are rewriting and we rewritten already the curriculums for the schools and the universities to let the people know of that, because it's a fascinating story. David was the first to be elected in the US, first Jewish person, but his father, who immigrated from Essaouira at that time, and he landed in Florida, and he was traveling, he was going to the US for a business. I mean, it was La Terre Promise, the promised land at that time. But he never opened a business. When he arrived, he saw how the Afro-Americans were treated, and he wrote and published, and it's very important for all of us to know that, the first book ever written and published in the US calling for the end of the slavery. It was a Moroccan Jew. But so last point, just for you to know, you referred to the fact that Morocco was the first country in the world to recognize America. But what you didn't know, that the one who wrote the Treaty of Recognition was the grandfather of the one who was elected and the father of the one who wrote the book. Could you imagine? 3 generations.
So you're definitely answering the question, André, as how important is it for a queen or a king to be very protective of his Jewish citizen?
He is not protective. I don't need to be protected. I am a citizen, a full citizen. And then I don't want to belong to a minority. I belong to my nation. I belong to a people. I am part of a glorious history. And my history book is rich, long memory, long history. And I know, and I will not let anyone to tell me that this history book was with a full large number of positive, glorious, happy pages, but also black pages. And I will not let anyone to tell me what was good, what was wrong. I am rich by the two, and I want to assume the two. No, I'm saying that because...
Pero no quiero que me vea. No me ve. Ahí se ve.
Could you switch off the mic, please?
Yeah. Please switch off the mic.
Por favor.
Hay alguien que está hablando en español. Mónica, ¿puedes bloquear los micrófonos de todo el mundo, salvo de los ponentes?
Sí, hecho, es alguien que acaba de entrar. Ya está.
Gracias.
All right, thank you.
Fleur, I would like to ask you a question. Thank you.
Just let me finish on that point.
Okay.
Just for you to know why I'm telling you that I'm now a citizen, and I don't see my king as the one who protects me. He protects Morocco and the nation of Morocco. But for you to know that the last constitution voted by Morocco, July 2011, is saying by writing in its foreword that Morocco by today was forged first by the Amazigh civilization, the Berbers, then by the Jewish civilization, and long time after by the Arabo-Muslim civilization. So we don't need anyone to be, the protector of the other. We are part of the same DNA. We are this fascinating Moroccan DNA who had the talent not to break, not to deny not to clash, not to confront all the civilization. We were, you know, the constituency. We provide the constituency of Morocco, and Judaism is key in the Moroccan history. And
thank you very much. Thank you very much for those precisions, André. And definitely, I was referring to the old times where Jews were protected by the king and the queen, but not recent time.
Right.
Yeah.
We were told the enemy.
Yeah, we are in full agreement. So, Fleur, my next question is for you. At the time of the Inquisition, which started in 1472, but you know, for the Edict of the Alhambra, which was on March 31 March 1492, there was an estimated Jewish population of maybe 200,000 Jews living in Spain. And nowadays, the Jewish Spanish population is estimated to be around 15,000 to 40,000. Its numbers are, maybe David can tell us because he knows this perfectly.
Nobody can tell you the real number, by the way. Nobody. Anyone, if we don't know it, you know, after serving for many years, the group of us, the truth is that the numbers oscillate. They should be, the true number should be around 20,000.
Yeah, so 15 or 20,000. So, and there have been no Jews literally going back and living in Spain. We've seen the law in 2015 by the minister, I believe it was Raúl Gallardón. Please correct me if I'm wrong, David.
Alberto Ruiz Gallardón, but it was an effort of the Spanish kingdom in itself. So, yes, summer 2015.
And since then, I believe that less than 10,000 Jews got their citizenship back.
There's been 145,000 applications, and the process is very slow for many reasons.
As we speak,
yeah, it's about 15-20% of those got the citizenship so far, but it will be great numbers within the next 2-3 years.
Fantastic. So, Fleur, the question that I have for you is very simple. So, Israel is by construction a land of aliyah, immigration, and you've been telling us how good the contribution of the Sephardi community is to Israel. But I mean, Spain has lost so many Jews. What do you think? What do you see as the main wounds that Spain suffered so long time for expelling its Jews out of his soul? What do you think Spain has lost? I know it's not an easy question.
I'm going to offend somebody with the answer, but never mind. I'm used to it. Look, I truly believe that any country that has expelled its Jews has suffered. Any country that has expelled its Jews has suffered economically, has suffered intellectually, has suffered culturally. Jews are fantastic contributors because we know how to go somewhere and blend in and contribute. That's what we've done throughout history. We don't go with any nationalistic desires anywhere except, of course, the land of Israel. We have settled everywhere around the world, and we have never had any nationalistic ambitions anywhere. All we've ever done is immigrate, work hard, work very hard, contribute, blend in, and be part of a society and be contributing members of society. We are the archetypal immigrants of success. And once we reach success, people don't seem to understand that we came, we worked hard, we suffered discrimination, and yet we made it. And when you see the anti-Semitism that's going on today in the West, it's an anti-Semitism that disguises itself as anti-Zionism. And one of the arguments is, how can we be anti-Semitic when the Jews are doing so well? In other words, discrimination can never shoot up. It only shoots down. And so I truly believe that the countries that have expelled the Jews have suffered, and we've seen it. Look at Spain. And look at Israel, which is 70 years old. Israel in every single economic parameter is ahead of Spain. We're only 72 years old. Now, I'm not arrogant enough to think that it's only the Jews that make successes in different countries, but we are certainly contribute greatly. But at the same time, I will say, those countries that are letting anti-Semitism, disguised as anti-Zionism, and sometimes not disguised, go unchecked, will suffer, because the anti-Semitism leads to other anti. It always starts with the Jews. It never finishes with the Jews. And so at the same time that we see these wonderful countries, and I have to bring my experience here of what's going on in the UAE today, because, you know, in Europe, and I grew up in Europe, I grew up in Gibraltar, I studied in London, I lived in London for 9 years, my husband's from London, you know, and in the same way that I see the deterioration of Europe in terms of its protection of its Jews, I see the flourishing of the Abraham Accords countries, of the Gulf, of Morocco, again, where Jews always lived in peace and coexistence, but now it can be done, you know, in a much more open way with Israel. And I just one little anecdote, you know, my husband, he's religious, he wears a kippah. When we go to Europe, whether it's Paris or Rome or London or Madrid, he doesn't wear the kippah because we always feel that you never know. You never know. One night in Dubai, we were walking back from a Shabbat dinner, and my husband was wearing a kippah. Normally he wouldn't. We got stopped on the street 3 times by people, Emiratis and Pakistanis and Indians, saying, welcome, we're so happy to have Jews here. We're so happy to have Israelis here. And so you see this juxtaposition of a problematic situation that is going unchecked in some countries in Europe, which is, of course, the inheritance of the expulsion of the Jews from many European countries. And then at the same time, an Arab region, the Gulf nations, who are embracing with all their hearts the state of Israel and the Jewish people. And I say to the people in the Gulf all the time, when you made peace with Israel and you normalized ties with Israel, you didn't just get Israelis, you've gotten the entire Jewish world. And when I was there in December, half of Paris was there, half of London was there, all the Jewish communities that I know were there. And what the Gulf have realized is that we're a package deal. You get Israel, you get the rest of the Jews. But it's the same thing. When you reject Israel, you reject the Jews.
You are mute, Jean-David.
Yeah, sorry, I've been mute. I'm not muting myself. I did not know. So thank you very much. I love very much the package expression. I believe you get it all. André, you're also on mute. So my next question is for you. André, at the time where this edict was proclaimed, it was for a very simple reason. It was for a religious war. It was not only the Jewish people that has been expelled from Spain, but also the Muslim people. Yeah. And Isabella la Católica and Ferdinando de Aragon, they are very contrasted figures in Spanish histories. We Jewish, we consider that, you know, they are Amalek relatives, but for the Spanish people, they are the king and the queen that reunificated Spain. And at that time, it was all about making Christianity the only religion in the land of Spain. And I would like your opinion on that. I would like your opinion on the fact that a land should belong ultimately to only one religion or not. And, you know, in Morocco, it's very clear that although it's a Muslim country, other faiths can have their right to live. That's exactly what you described, Fleur, in the Emirati. And so that is my question to you. Do you see nowadays the repetition of the same pattern elsewhere in the world, where, you know, a religion wants to be the one and the only one in its place, and, you know, eradicate all the others.
Yeah, I am more optimistic on that point. You know, we are now, unfortunately, in the time and in the community of nations, I mean, worldwide, who is regressing, definitely. But I see it as conjunctural, not really as a deep change. We know, I mean, in history, you have cycles. And this cycle is just a cycle, I mean, a painful saying cycle, because it's very archaic, and it's this kind of culture of denial and of clash, or of communitarism, populism everywhere. I don't see it, you know, as really being the permanent status for the community of nations. It's clear, and you were referring to this period in Spain, the Inquisition period. I think that we have to keep in mind for that time that when the Jews were persecuted by the Spanish authorities, kings and executives, and Spanish people largely also, they were often, you know, helped and welcomed and saved by Muslims who were also persecuted. And there is a very rich literature describing that, I mean, it was not every time, it was not in all cases or everywhere, but it was large enough to keep in mind the fact that already at that time, you have the Trinity, Christianity, Islam, and Jews. Jews were once again persecuted, but they found a safe home in the Muslim homes. Long time after, during the Nazi period, bis repetita. I'm so proud as a Moroccan that when the persecution of Jews, the Holocaust, Shoah, was in the Western world, was in Christianity, even if the Nazis, I don't assimilate the Nazis to Christianity, but it was in a Christian land. Those who sent some seed of humanism, of, let's say, help to the Jews, were also in Islam. Morocco, some, I mean, less visible in Tunisia, in Turkey at that time, from some example also in Egypt. But you have this kind of, you know, if you are in the business, you know, at the end of the year, you have your balance sheet, and you know, on the bottom line, what was good, what was negative, okay? If you look on the situation of Judaism, on the last 600 years or more, and you see on your balance sheet where Jews were largely persecuted, close to 12 million people killed on that two tragic episodes, and where they were, I mean, not only welcome, but also protected. Morocco was welcoming Jews from Europe at the early 30s, 1930s, when the Nazis were emerging and they were fleeing to Morocco, and Morocco opened its gates. And don't forget that the King Mohamed V, Mohamed V, he even if Morocco was under the French mandate, French protectorate, he resisted the accelerated law of Vichy. it was not just top down. It was not only the king. It was also bottom up. The civil society, hundreds of, families, European Jews could testify, not at that generation, but the child, the families, they could tell you how they were welcomed and they were protected in Morocco. I'm not saying that just to tell we are the good people, we are good guys, we are the good country. No, there is something different. I'm speaking about Morocco because, as I said at the beginning, it was not always a rosy story. It was up and down, but as all the civilization. But what is, for me, like in economy, you have the fundamentals. The fundamentals never change radically. And you see that today, it's not by accident, it's not by coincidence that, we have in this fascinating journey in Morocco as a proud Jew, as a full Jew, to be part of this, let's say, building of a Muslim nation, of an Arab country, of a country which has in its DNA diversity as a legitimate and a key component of the Moroccan nation. It was not always the case. It was not easy. Even myself, I have the privilege to be where I am in my post, in my responsibility at the Royal Palace for 31 years. It never happens before in history. It never happens also that two kings, I have the privilege to serve the king, the late King Hassan II, and I have the honor to serve the King Mohamed VI. Usually, when you have a new king, you have a new team. But I was enough fortunate to have this experience, which makes me, sorry to say that, a member of a very honorable club, a very selective club, a very snobbish club, because I am the only member of my club. But it's not myself, it's my country. And I think what you said, Fleur, we are not only the bridge, we are the incarnation of the art of all possible for Israel. What I'm caring for the safety, for the perennity, the security of Israel. And Israel is not in Central Europe, is not in the neighbor of New York. It's not in close to Shanghai. It is in the Middle East. It is and it will remain in the Arab world. And myself as a Jewish person, I am an Arab by culture. And I'm sorry that my fellow compatriots from Morocco don't really assume it or are telling it. An Italian, when he's saying that he's European, has no problem, no frilosity. He's Italian and he's European.
André, sorry for interrupting you. It's a very emotional statement, and I believe it's a very strong one. It's only that time is running a little bit too fast. I'd like to have more time, more extensible time. So I'd like to open the floor for questions in 5 minutes. If you want to ask your questions, you have a chat feature on Zoom. I believe you can use it. So from there, Monica or David or myself can select your question and bring you online. Fleur, sorry, I've lost you. Okay, Fleur, this is my last question to you. We are seeing in Spain a rise of anti-Zionism, which is very strong. We are seeing a political party like Podemos, which has a very, very strong stance against Israel. I'm not talking about the Jews, but at least against Israel. From France, we are seeing that there are many new tourists. We have many new tourists going to Israel for the first time, those tourists being Christians. So my question to you is, what is your message to Spain, to the Christian Spain, for Israel? What is your invitation? What do you want to tell those people that are trying to demonize us?
You know, it just seems so ironic that the people who are the most anti-Israel are the very countries that kicked us out. Where do they expect us to go? You kept telling us, go home. We went home. And now you're upset that we're home. So, you know, there's a limit of how much energy I can spend on haters, because there's people who are you're never going to convince. And I'm a pretty convincing person, but you're never going to convince certain people. And at some point you have to just say, these people are anti-Semites because they don't listen to any type of logic. So what I try and do in my work for Jerusalem is to find the points of connection. A few weeks ago, we had all the main spiritual leaders of Spain. We gathered, this is something that the Israeli Tourism Ministry did along with us at the city. They gathered holy prayers from every religious leader, from Christian, Catholic, Protestant, Baha'i, Buddhist, every spiritual leader in Spain. They wrote messages that I went and put inside the Kotel. So this is one example of how we are trying to constantly find what unites us rather than what divides us. The other thing that I try and do with countries that have more hostile populations is try and help them understand that Jerusalem is the very example of a diverse city. Yes, we have our problems. Yes, we have our challenges, but on a day-to-day, and nobody believes me, but you just have to come and live it. On a day-to-day, we live with Arabs. My gym, in my cafes, in the public spaces, in our parks, we live day to day, Jews and Arabs. Arabs are 40% of Jerusalem, 40%. And every day we work together, we go to the same places. We don't live in the same neighborhoods, but I also don't live in the same neighborhoods as ultra-Orthodox Jews. We kind of have our own communities, and that's okay. But the day-to-day experience is a common experience. And so this is something that I also try and explain to people from more hostile countries. I say, just come and spend a day with me in Jerusalem and see who I interact with. Come on the bus and see who's on the bus. Come on the train and see who's on the train. And see that people are living together. Like I said, with challenges, with problems. The common experiences, like me as a mother in a park, or even me in a hospital giving birth, which I had the privilege to do 4 times. I have 4 children. Every time I had a baby, I shared a room with an Arab lady from East Jerusalem who was also having children. And so again, this is what I try and impart to people, that the experience in Jerusalem is one of Jews and Arabs coexisting. And that is, to me, familiar, because that's how I was brought up. That's how my family lived in Morocco. And that's what I know. And so, again, to sum up, the haters will hate, and they can waste their own energy on their negativity. I try and find the common points, and I try and find what unites us rather than what divides us. And of course, even in the things that people believe is their truth, I'm always trying to give objective facts and anecdotes that really express that Jerusalem, for me, is the laboratory of the solution, not the problem.
Yeah, that's it.
Mr. Moderator, can I add a comment and a question?
Of course.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you, Fleur. Thank you, André, for all the fantastic statements that come obviously from very deep, from a very deep and emotional point. No? So I would like to say first of all that you know, for us in the Fundación, this is exactly what we look for. This is exactly what we're building, and I would like to first acknowledge that there's two people around us in this Zoom that have been former ministers of the State of Israel. One, Micha Harish, who used to be not only the head of labor of Israel and an ardent fighter for peace for Israel, but also a key person in the establishment of the diplomatic relations between Spain and Israel. So thank you, Micha, for being part also of our foundation. So that's number one. Secondly, I also want to acknowledge that we have Shimon Shitrit, who was also a minister in various positions in Israel, from technology to science to religious affairs, and he was born in Morocco, in Arfoud. So, you know, this makes it even more special for us. And now to delve into my question, I'd like to ask both André and Fleur about the initiatives that both Morocco and Israel are developing, especially in the field of education, in order to create this empathy. André was referring to educational programs, a new way of teaching in Morocco. I'd love to know more about that. And of course, Fleur, if you can add about that in Israel, that would be very interesting.
Well, David, I don't know whether you've told everybody that our common project between André, yourself, and I, but the vision is, and this was really David's brainchild. We threw out many ideas and David came up with the gem. And that was to create some type of Erasmus scholarship idea for Abraham Accords countries, for Jews and Arabs, Jewish and Arab students, Muslims, Christians. And that is something that I'm very, very proud to be involved in. And again, hopefully in the next 6 months, we'll be advancing with that, culminating in a conference that we hope to have very soon. And I agree with you. Education is key. And I'm just going to get political for 1 second. Our main block to peace, you know, people keep focusing on blocks to peace. The main block to peace with the Palestinians is their educational curriculum. Nothing else. It's not the settlement, and it's ultimately, it's what do you teach your children and what can they hope for the future? And so to me, everything is in education. And one of the things that I'm very involved with is fighting for Palestinian children to have the privilege of a curriculum that teaches coexistence and teaches shared society. And I'm very proud to be a supporter of a program of Jewish educators and Arab educators in Israel. And you know what the program is called? Andalusia. Because the last time that Jews and Muslims had such close connections was in Andalusia, of course, before we were all expelled. And so these are the types of programs that we're very involved in Jerusalem and that we're involved in locally. Then I'm fighting for the negativity and anti-Semitism in the curriculum of Palestinian children. And of course, looking forward to the future, such a bright future we have with the Abraham Accord countries, and how we can nurture a new generation of leaders that breathe and live peace and coexistence.
Thank you, Fleur. So
May I comment on this point? Because
yes, please, if you can elaborate.
No, I fully agree on what Fleur said and David too. We will win by education, not by guns, definitely. And what I'm experiencing myself as a person in Morocco for the last months, but I mean, for a very long time. But what is going on now is like La Grande Marche in China, a cultural revolution by education, starting from the very beginning at the age of 5, 6 for the children. Just explaining what diversity means for Morocco today, and on which story it is based, the roots of it, and starting by Judaism, the role played by Judaism in the history, in the long run of the Moroccan nation. And you cannot imagine, you cannot just think 1 second how quick was the change. You cannot, I was myself so impressed, surprised. I mean, after the launching of the first curriculums in the colleges and in Morocco, and it was launched in Essaouira at Beit Dakira by the Minister of Education and myself under the instruction of His Majesty. 2 weeks later, 107 clubs of dialogue were created by the children themselves, club to know more about the other. And it was fascinating. I visited those colleges. I listened to the children at the age of 14, 15, 16, finishing their college. It was beautiful. It was fascinating. It was quick. It was deep. It was a happy story for everyone. It works, and it's for free. I mean, you don't need huge budget. You don't need hundreds of, millions of euros or dirham or dollars. And I'm trying, because I'm part of the board of the Alliance Israélite Universelle. I'm trying to convince the President Mark Eisenberg and others to create more schools of the Alliance in Morocco, not only for the Jews. We have still few schools who are, with children, Muslim and Arabs. It gives the opportunity to the Muslim children to learn Hebrew, to know the Jewish holidays, to be close, to have this proximity with the Jewish civilization. And it creates also the opportunity for the Jewish children to know more about the Quran, to know more about the Muslim holidays, to know more about the Muslim tradition and rituals. And it works. I mean, it's so moving. When you enter a class at the École de l'Alliance in Casablanca, you can hear the children singing in Hebrew, both Jews and Muslims. You can ask the Muslim children about the Seder, about Pesach. They will tell you. And it's not, a huge investment. And you have 100,000 of Moroccan Muslim families who want their children to go to the Alliance school. We have the key, easy, and it will change a lot, because Morocco could mirror this experience all over the Arab world, could have a kind of, it could be a starter of something which is so deep, so important.
So yes, definitely education is key. Education will be the solution. And as we're speaking about education, I'd like to reflect on the fantastic work the foundation is doing in Spain, because it's very hard to teach without perpetuating memory. And it is extremely important that there is a place in Spain that tell the story and how important the contribution of the Spanish Jews has been over the time. And, I really want to commend David and the fantastic team and the board for everything they are doing. Those are difficult times, but nevertheless, they are making progress. I'm receiving newsletters, and all the time I can see that it's moving forward. And yes, it is very important to educate the Spanish society, the Spanish people, about their heritage. And very surprisingly, there might very well be that over 50% of the current Spanish people have Jewish blood, because, Some left, some were converted, but there has been a Jewish presence in Spain, and there are roots which are very important. So thank you, David, for everything you're doing. It was really a great pleasure to be a part of you tonight. And hopefully next time we'll meet in person. It will be a live event, either in Madrid or in Rabat or in Casablanca or in Jerusalem.
In Essaouira in October. André said
don't forget.
We have a beautiful initiative, God willing. And I want to thank André really for all your help in this process. And, we are in your hands from the perspective that we're going to support it 100% with many organizations from all over the world. But we really appreciate how you have taken this défi, this
you will see great. It will be something which, nobody will forget.
And as Moroccan Jews, we're thrilled that this is happening in Morocco.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're thrilled.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'll keep you updated.
Just give a salute to Micha Harish and to Shimon. We were long-time friends. I didn't know that they were attending, but I'm so happy to tell them bonsoir.
Bonsoir. À bientôt.
Bonsoir.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Moadim lesimcha. Bye.
Gracias, David.